Hello, welcome back to the True Crime Lounge. My name is Breezy. I'll be your host, and today I will be talking about our part four of our four-part series on the mysterious death of George Reeves. Um, and but at the next episode, I will tell you who our next topic will be. I know you're excited as I am, but it's not a secret. I love old Hollywood. So talking about cases like this gives a break from the more serious cases. Not saying these cases aren't serious, but talking about old Hollywood cases is very interesting, and you get to find out more, really and truly, about what happened. So, with that being said, why don't I jump in? But before I do that, hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. Also, please subscribe. Um, Today we are going to be talking about what really happened. Evidence. Archie Moore theories and his legacy. Okay, and I'll use that because I have my little list right here. But anyway, um, Now, here's what happened. Lenore and three other friends were guests at Reeves' home the night of his death. And in the movie, they have been sitting quietly on the couch, drinking and listening to Reeves playing his guitar and singing a tune in Spanish. After Lenore complained that the song was boring her, Reeves reportedly told her that he was tired and he retired to the bedroom. And that was the last time he was ever seen. Now, by the time the police were notified 45 minutes later, had passed, and Lenore and her guests claimed that they heard a shot around 1:59 p.m. a.m. When the police arrived, Reese was lying naked on the floor, dead of a single gunshot, in the right temple, with a gunshot in the right temple. Now, the coroner who did the official inquest was quick to rule it a suicide, but questions immediately arose. Evidence would be collected at the scene of his observation and surroundings of the suggested probable causes of death. Now, Reeves's mom, um, Helen Basella, arrived in LA and quickly commissioned her own investigation. Although there was an elaborate funeral was held for him in place in well-attended Hollywood's finest, his body would not be cremated for another 3 years while the investigation was ongoing. And Helen hired a detective from Nick Harris's detective agency, a young operative um, named Milo Sforigilio. Sorry if I'm butchering up. I'm terrible with names. Um, to conduct an investigation, therefore postponing the cremation of a body for 3 years. However, Ree's mom died before any new evidence could be uncovered. In the movie, his name was the detective's name was changed from to a much easier pronounced Lucimo, who was convincingly portrayed by Adrian Brody. And Simo smells a rat just as Ferreglio did, and his investigation uncovered some glaring inconsistencies with what the official report said, inconsistencies that suggested that there are different conclusions. Simo is dogged in the pursuit of the real facts of the case, and what uncovers both shocks him and nearly gets him killed. So, here's the evidence. The private investigator was looking into the Reeves and they found that the following inconsistencies: no fingerprints on the gun, there was no powder burns on the headroom, which would imply the gun was several inches from the head, and at the time it was fired. This is the usual of suicide, and the victim of is usually has the gun as directly against his head. Now, his hands were not tested for gunpowder residue, so there was no help and no help one way or other. The shells the spent shell was found under his body, and how could that happen? Well, other bruises were found on his body and could get there. And the gun was found between his feet in nearly all suicides involving a gun, where it had fallen and usually inconsistent. If the victim is sitting or standing, the it falls to his feet. However, if he or she is lying, it will fall on their head. And it's believed that Reeves was lying down at the time. Now the police were not called for at least a half an hour to 45 minutes after his death. And the theory is that Lenore in the house guests had to sober up to get their story straight. And over the next years, the general assumption is that Reeves was depressed over a Superman show cancellation. And his depression caused him to take his own life. And he was supposedly unhappy with being a typecast as Superman role and unhappy over not being able to get many roles. However, his supposed slump was over the time of his death, and his friends were have been happier than he had been in years, and he was looking forward to his marriage in another season of a popular TV show, which had just been rescheduled for the following season. Now, money wasn't the problem either, and he had gotten residuals from Superman reruns and other sources. And he had been reportedly signed a 5-picture deal with Paramount Pictures. Now, um, let's talk about lightweight champion Archie Moore. Now, there are some counts that support the scenes in the movie that says he was forced to consider going to professional wrestling just to suit himself. However, aside from appearing publicly with some well-known professional wrestlers, there was no credible evidence that he ever took that prospect seriously. Moreover, his death, and he was scheduled with the light heavyweight champion Archie Moore. Why would someone take their own life when they were given the chance to shine in the spotlight of such a high profile event? It makes no sense, honestly. Now, over the years, Reeves' death, Jack Larson, and Noel Neal, both inspired Reeves, did not commit suicide. Um, but there is some credible evidence that could be used to back a suicide theory and verdict. It was reported that Reeves has suffered a concussion in an auto accident. Um, and shortly before his death, which resulted in the doctor prescribing him heavy duty painkillers. Now, this leads to suspect that his mental health may have been compromised and he could not have driven his own life. Now, he also had a drinking problem at one time, and he was reportedly going off the wagon a year before his death. Nonetheless, his blood alcohol level was shortly after revealed to be 0.27, 2.5 times the legal intoxication point. Now, on a straight dope website, which gives straight answers to urban myths, a staffer said and Reeves have been identified as Jumble Jim, which examines the evidence and stone facts that concludes that his death was a suicide. Um, among other things, believe that he was sitting up while he shot himself, which would make logical to find a gun by his feet, and the casing would have fallen out. Now, the bullet hole was to the ceiling and everything. Now, no fingerprints were found at the gun, but have been reported, and the gun had been recently oiled, which it would have been impossible to get a reliable set of prints. Fingerprints do not hold an oil any better than they would in a liquid. Now, what are some theories? Well, based on the inconsistency of the evidence, there have been widespread speculation over who might have killed Reeves, and that he didn't do it himself. One theory is that he was killed by Lenore in a fit of passion or an argument. And this is possibly whether they were married, or but like anything else surrounding Reeves' death, this is pure speculation. And if this is the case, why would the house guests risk their own reputation to cover for her? Now, what comes to light during the independent investigation was the presence of two bullet holes inside the floor. However, did they get that? Lenore's explanation was that she was playing with the gun on another occasion several days earlier and had been discharged. Now, Lenore, when questioned, was maintained that Reeves killed himself due to a failed career and an alleged inability to find more work. Unfortunately for those theorists who suspects foul play, her version of events that evening is the only official one, and there was no reliable list of who was present in the house at the time of the shooting. According to Lemon, those present were Carol Von Runkle, William Bliss, and Robert Condon. Now, some theorists suggest that Reeves and Lenore's relationship was quite volatile, and that they were often used seen arguing in public. And her reputation as a New York City nightclub hellraiser dated back to the 1940s, leading to some to conclude that she and Reeves could have been arguing about in the bedroom the night he was shot, and that she was holding the gun, and it may have been discharged in possession of it. And this could possibly explain the bullet hole in the floor in addition to the fatal wound to the ceiling. I'll be right back, y'all. Okay. Well, okay, we're back. I had to do a brief test to make sure my camera wasn't acting stupid on me again, but here we are. I had to go blow my nose. I had a cold last week. I'm annoyed, and unfortunately, I'm at the point where I made a blow in my nose, or I got phlegm stuck in my mouth, so I had to take breaks for that. It's not fun, and I hate personally being sick. But anyway, let's finish this episode because I really want to get to my daily walk before it starts getting dark at 4:30. Unfortunately. But anyway, casting further suspicion on Lenore, many wondered why she left California the day after his death, never returned, and never explained why she waited so long for the death to call the police, and none of the other house guests have provided testimony. Now, giving credits to the theory that Lenore or another person might have been involved was an angle with the shot that appeared to have been fired. Now, a bullet hole was found in the ceiling above the bed. How would that have gotten there if Reeves had that failed shot while he was laying down? Now, another theory would suggest, now this is also plausible, that it went for that Tony might have been responsible, though not directly, and she was known to him and bitter about about their affair. Now, particularly since Reeves and Lenore were living together in a house that she had bought for them, Lenore would tell investigators that Reeves' death on Tony was harassing with phone calls for months, so much that she had sought legal advice on how to deal with them. Now, consequently, Tony might have hired someone to kill them, a theory that further credits um, by the night that she was has ties to the mob, and that has been their case. And Lenore, um, and her other guests have been threatening to fate of, if anything. Um, Now, however, doubt has been cast upon the theory, but the fact that Tony continued to worship Reese even after they broke up with her after their death for years forward was so stricken with Alzheimer's. Tony sought to perpetuate his memory as any way she could. After her husband's death in 1963, Tony was wealthy and made sure to live comfortably until her death in 1983. Um, now, and despite the engagement to his near marriage to Lenore, Reese must have felt a deep down the same way about Tony as he left the entire estate to her in his will. named no one else as the beneficiary, and after the reading of the will, Lenore was quoted saying bitterly, "Tony got the house for charity, and I got a broken heart," referring to the charities in which she and Reeves worked tirelessly. Now, the theory that Reeves might have been murdered by someone hired by Mannix didn't hold either. Mannix knew about the relationship and long before it ended and gave covert approval so he could carry on with his Japanese mistress, and he had no motive to killing his wife's lover. Um, Now let's talk about his legacy. Um, What really happened to George was on the morning of the hours of June 16, 1959 was that did he really kill himself? Did Lenore do it? Did hitman hired by Tony do it? Well, the truth is something that the official explanation for the death may never be known. But nearly 50 years has passed, and any trail of evidence is credited. And Hollywoodland has cast doubts to the official cause of his death. And at least no one, and probably no one, seems to reopen or reinvestigate in the case. In all likelihood, it will always remain closed. But the memory of Reeves lives in two generations. Later, in the Superman Returns, and the legacy has spawned. Now, tragically, the role appeared to be cursed. While taken equestrian in Virginia May 27, 1995, Reed was thrown from a horse. Um, in obituaries and political cartoons, Reed was lauded as much as his bravery for dealing with paralysis, as much as his own screen Man of Steel did. Now, let's talk about Dana and Christopher Reeves. Reeves' wife Dana, who barely was struck with paralysis, but his legacy does live on. Why is my laptop being stupid on me now? My laptop likes to be stupid on me. But his legacy is exemplified and it does live on. But that is it for this series. Join me next time as we talk about Thomas Ince. Y'all have a great day, and I'll see you next time. And I forgot to turn the light on for this one.